This is Jake Seeley, and I'm the blown ACL that ruins your football season.
Good news, everyone! Let's get dangerous. This is so good!
I know!
It feels so right!
It's Jake Seeley.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Nice try, Moonman! Pretending not to know Earth's greatest mastermind!
You just made the list!
I thought you said that was a myth.
Just because it's a myth doesn't mean it's not true.
If you all blindly follow my plan, we may have a chance.
Sure, we talk about it all the time.
Really?
No, burn.
So I was about to upload the pod, and we got the news of the DJ Moore trade. So I'm adding that real quickly to the beginning. And this might sound a little weird, but that's why. This is the addendum to the beginning of the podcast this week. So DJ Moore off to the Bills, which if you're not a Luther Burden or Rome Odunze or Colston Loveland manager, you're probably not celebrating like the rest who are. But obviously, we have DJ Moore heading to be the new number one for Josh Allen, his best and newest number one since Stephon Diggs left. And I do think there is still wide receiver one upside. We are not drafting DJ Moore as a wide receiver one. But if he replicated his 2023 season not too long ago, first year with the Bears, and did that with Josh Allen, his best quarterback in some time, as much as Caleb Williams made a great improvement last year, it's still Josh Allen. I wouldn't be shocked if he finishes as a wide receiver one, even inside the top 10. As for Luther Burden and Rome Odunze, we saw the upside of Rome Odunze being a wide receiver one in the first half last year, especially those first 4 games. And then we saw Luther Burden late in the season, the last 4 and the playoffs. Upside for both of them. Both of them to honestly be wide receiver 2s with wide receiver 1 ceilings. You know I like both of them. You know I think Luther Burden has all-around talent. And I think he's a little bit less of a risk than Odunze if Colston Loveland is also a top 10 pushing top 5 tight end as we saw him late in the year. There's 3 here, and the thing with Caleb Williams is he didn't even throw for 4,000 yards last year. Hopefully next year he's the first Bears quarterback to do so. But there's the risk that one of them is a wide receiver 1 and Colston Loveland is a top 5, top 10 tight end, and the other is a wide receiver 2/3 with inconsistency, or the risk that both are top 20 wide receivers and then Colston Loveland is inconsistent like a Dalton Kincaid. Point being, investing in all, but there is the potential to sell high or let others go super high in the drafts because of the risk of all 3 hitting. You guys know I wrote that article about the odds of all 3 or the top 3 options all having 1,000+ yards, let alone 900+ yards. But we're excited. That's the point. We're excited for Luther Burden. We're excited for Rome Odunze and Loveland, and obviously Caleb Williams. I'm most excited for Burden. And now let's get into the actual podcast point that I had for this week. Game on, you Ducks. I know I was going to talk mostly running back and tight ends, like way too early rankings this podcast, and kind of pivot a little bit, mostly because I got ahead of things because we're going on vacation next week, as you might know, and we're going to talk rookies. Combine's over. Everybody's overreacting to 40 times, as they always do, and my rookies are out, 75 of them, and I figured that would be better to talk about because we got free agency next week. I'm going to do my free agency recap after free agency week, and we're off vacation. We come back next week, so 2 weeks from now, you'll get the free agency recap, and I figured, you know what? There's going to be a little bit of movement in the ranks anyway, so I'll do a fresh, updated ranks on that whole situation because we're already seeing some potential movement with Kenneth Walker and all the other options. So, yeah, I figured I wanted to make this a little bit more greenish for you guys. You can go back and listen. So, yes, save this one. This is going to be also early. It's an early look at the rookies for this year. Right off the top, if you go to The Athletic and check out the article, by the way, I broke them down into tiers, gamer style, I don't know, maybe even anime style, whatever you want to call it, because, hey, I'm a 90s kid. You know this by now. And, yeah, did the S tier, A tier, and down from there. And that's how we're ranking this year. So as a real quick precursor to that, you will notice one thing at quarterbacks. There are no S-tier quarterbacks. S-tier, for everybody out there that doesn't want to check the link, please, hashtag check the link. S-tier is elite. Elite, like they should be in the 1 tier as in a QB1, an RB1, a wide receiver 1, tight end 1, not the 1, but that tier of 1s. Some of them might even do so as a rookie. I don't see that for anybody, including Fernando Mendoza, which we'll talk about for a second. A tier are like they have the chance to be 1s. They should be at least 2s, maybe 3s at worst at wide receiver. B tier down from there, spot starter, landing weight starts to really affect their value, including their obviously usage scheme and all that type of stuff. C tier, more risk. D tier, long shots. Long shots are like Ty Chandler, Jordan Whittington, and Jordan Whittington could still hit, but Ty Chandler did for a little bit. C tier, I'm not perfect. Like, there's been a Tank Dell was in that group his season, so kind of gives you an idea. But anyway, at quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, like I said, nobody's in S tier. Fernando Mendoza is also the only A tier quarterback I have. A lot of people keep calling him Jared Goff with some rushing. I think there's a little bit of kind of Baker Mayfield 2024 to him, maybe even Brock Purdy for his style, and I think the fit's going to obviously come into play, but guess what? Gets to go to the Raiders, unless shockingly, somehow that doesn't happen in Kubiak's system. As my smash-ups, that's the one thing too. I hope you enjoy it. I enjoy it, and that's all that matters. No, I had some people read through it and had a lot of fun with it. I do smash-ups for fantasy purposes to kind of give you an idea. Some Baker Mayfields and Brock Purdy, he's Baker Purdy. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you could expect in fantasy. He could be back-end QB1. He could also fall into the QB2 range. And the production is going to have to do a lot with his weapons and his situation, which we said, Raiders. So hopefully they address the wide receiver position alongside Brock Bowers and get Mendoza into the QB1 territory, hopefully by next year. If it happened in his rookie season, I want to be shocked. I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked. So few others real quick before we talk about the other positions. Again, this is always going to be quick hitty of a podcast, so to speak. Actually, speaking of which too, but like I see a couple thousand of you are still listening during the off season, which I really, really appreciate, by the way. And I'm saying this, I hate asking, as you guys know, but I would really, really appreciate, because you are my most loyal of listeners. You are my bestest friends, so to speak, from a fantasy standpoint, which means I can ask you to please try to grow the podcast. I can't use Twitter anymore. Half the tweets people send me, I don't even see. Half my tweets I don't even know people see. And that's not a way to get the word out anymore. Blue sky is blue sky, and Instagram, and I don't do TikTok, so like it's very hard. I don't know how else to get it out there besides asking you guys, which I hate doing, but share it with you. I have other quarterbacks, Alar, Beck, Peyton, and I do have 10 quarterbacks in there, but real quick on Ty Simpson, because he seems to be the most volatile from an opinion standpoint. My opinion is this, like I call them Bryce Nix, which Bryce Young and Bo Nix, but the concerns of both, the upside of both because he can run like Bo Nix, but the concerns in the decision making. And I have real concern watching him play that the intermediate, especially over the middle of the field, throws that he makes just because of his questionable anticipation are going to turn into interceptions at the NFL, if not at least batted passes and incompletions. So I have legitimate concerns. Ty Simpson would not be a year one starter for me if I'm an NFL team. Like, obviously I'm not, and obviously I'm not perfect at this, but I would let Ty Simpson start. He also, we're not surprised he doesn't have a ton of history of playing in college. But anyway, we saw before the injury the potential, that's the good Bryce Young and the good Bo Nix, fourth quarter Bo Nix, basically. The downside is obviously, if you want to say it's all injury, but there were some flashes in there even when he was playing well against stronger, not the best competition earlier before he got hurt, but just those decisions over the middle of the field I have real concerns about. So upside here, but I think some major risks. Super flex would be the only way I would consider him in round one of rookie-only dynasty drafts, by the way. And like I said, in redraft, I think he's going to be completely off the table, even if he falls into the first round, because the NFL is QB desperate right now, as you see floated rumors for backups in trades, even the Jimmy Garoppolo and Andy Daltons of the world, which I don't think Andy Dalton gets anything in a trade. But point being, people are desperate for quarterbacks. Ty Simpson getting to the first round would not shock me. So upside, by the way, huge upside. Taylor Green, huge risk. I called him Jalen Richardson, a mix of Jalen Monroe and Anthony Richardson. That kind of gives you an idea. Running backs, we do have an S-tier prospect. One, Jeremiyah Love. Should shock nobody. I made a stupid one here. I included Pokemon into the smash up, saying it's like pulling a hollow rare Lucario, and then I was comparing him to DeMarco Murray and Jahmyr Gibbs. Everybody's saying Jahmyr Gibbs. So, LuMarco Gibbs. I don't know why he turned into an Italian Pokemon smash up, but he did. Look, if Jeremiyah Love is not a fantasy RB1 as a rookie, then I would be shocked. Like, this is like Bijan Robinson was RB8. Everybody was taking him as RB2 or 3. That's the the hesitancy with drafting rookie running backs, like even the best of Saquon Barkley and Ezekiel Elliott's top 3. But those are the best of the best. It's more often that they're mid back end RB1s. We just dealt with this with Ashton Genty, but that was a really bad offensive line, a really bad team. I don't think that's going to happen to Love. Maybe, but I don't think it's going to. I would say more of the Bijan fallback is that he'll be back end top 10, but don't go crazy for him in redraft and push him up to the top 3 or 4, because the Barkleys and the Zekes of the world, or more rare, it's more likely to get that back end, but still RB1 value. I'm going to love in all fantasy purposes. I kind of didn't have an A tier at first for running back because, and I think you're seeing this already with contracts and trade rumors and all that type of stuff, is that the NFL doesn't seem too enamored with this draft class. I wasn't either, and I was really struggling. Like, I don't think there's any A tiers. I don't think there's any, you know what, they're guaranteed to be at least an RB2 with RB1 upside. But I did have two where I was like, you know what? I just think they're also better than the B tier. So to real quickly, the B tier includes Katron Allen, Claiborne, Coleman, Emmett Johnson, Singleton, and that's it. I originally had Price and Washington in there, but I bumped them up to like an A/B tier because I do think they kind of stand out from that group. Still have concerns if Price and Washington only end up timeshare running backs. I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, I do think they have upside to be a consistent RB2. Price kind of into the Javonte Williams, Raheem Mostert world. And then Mike Washington, I comp to Chris Carson and Jay Ajayi, or even Clinton Porras. I said Clinton Carson or Chris Ajayi. I remember Jay Ajayi. I miss Jay Ajayi. And obviously, everybody's going nuts on Washington after his testing at the Combine. So I will say this. There's plenty of time for a redraft. Mike Washington's conversation right now was really only for you Dynasty people out there. If you are in the first round, and Mike Washington's name is on the board after Price, if you're in Superflex, Mendoza, maybe even Mendoza goes, after the top three wide receivers, which we're going to talk about, I would start floating rumors. Yeah, float rumors, put out there. You're thinking that you might be willing to trade. I would start floating out trade offers for your spot, or if you draft Washington, then immediately flip them, because this is the opportunities that we get a lot of time is people go nuts, and they're super excited about his testing, freak athlete, but we've seen this before. I'm not calling him Kenneth Walker, or I would have comped him to Kenneth Walker, but the Kenneth Walker situation from being with the Seahawks is a good testament of the potential downside, and the fact that if Washington ends up in a similar situation, we can scream and yell at the top of our lungs all day long that we want him to get more opportunities and be bell cow-ish, and he's in a split backfield. Well, if you sold high on the potential of him being a RB1 because of the hype, you see where I'm going with this? So you don't have to. I'm just saying that there's the potential, especially if people are going to read this and be like, oh my God, Clinton Portis. There's the excitement there. To go back to Claiborne real quick, that was the other Pokemon reference I made in my article. This is, I never played Pokemon Outside Stadium 1 and 2 on Nintendo 64, but then I got the new one, ZA, and because it's a different style, I actually really kind of got into it. So now I've been playing Pokemon. So I made another one, and I made a conversation, the fact that I made a comparison that Claiborne kind of uses double team where you go like back and forth blur. So if you don't get Pokemon, sorry, I just finally got into it. That's what's on my mind right now. So sorry, Pokemon, everybody. Gotta catch 'em all. Actually, I do know the song. I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was. Dun, dun, dun. To catch them is my quest. To train them is my cause. Gonna draft them left and right and put them on my fantasy team. These Pokemon players are making me live the dream. Fantasy championship. And I have no more listeners to my podcast. Moving on. Oh, the Nyheim Hines, kind of like a very elusive Claiborne. I think his landing spot is going to be very interesting. I think he could be RB2 in the right team, but on, RB3 on the wrong one, unfortunately. But I do think that he has a decent floor given his ability. There's a lot of people talking about Seth McGowan, and I understand why. I would kind of see him as more of a risk just because there's the Derrick Henry talk, which I actually brought up myself, Chris Rodriguez. But the Chris Rodriguez RB3 needs like things to break right, injuries or trades and everything. I don't see him necessarily going to lead a team right out of the draft. But there's the upside that if he comes into a Chris Rodriguez type of situation, a couple weeks of RB2 value, mostly RB3. And then the one other, like I said, if you're not going to read the article, if you want some of the more interesting names, at least in my opinion, Adam Randall, I don't think I'm higher than most on him. I made the joke that everybody's comparing him to Cordell Patterson, and I get it. Obviously, with the upside of the Cordell Patterson wide receiver, running back mold, I think he's a little bit more Antonio Gibson, and again, converted wide receiver to running back. But I think he's a little bit behind in speed, so that's where my concern is that I wanted to see more of the explosiveness. There's still developmental time, and obviously half and full point PPR, which is what most people play these days. There is upside for Randall. I think a lot of people are going to wonder why I'm not quite as high as most. Wide receivers, everybody. I have 3 in the S tier, which almost seems to be the commonality for the past couple seasons. But anyway, Lemon, Tate, and Tyson, which probably surprises nobody. I am not concerned, zero concern, none at all about the Carnell Tate 40 time. Actually, as you saw, there might be even Twitter beef out there with Florio and who was he for? Adam Schefter at the whole thing. Like, who cares? Anyway, point being, that beef is the problem with the end. Like, how do we not have electronic, consistent, standardized testing? Like, I don't know if you guys saw the Xavier Leggett clip where they overlaid him and the other one, like, wait, who was it? Was it Leggett? Anyway, one of them ran faster than the other, but the video overlaid and showed that he was actually behind him because we're still doing human stopwatch. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm annoyed by this because I can't even get my thought out. But CeeDee Lamb ran a 4.5, everybody. Like, so chill out, which is actually a decent comparison for Carnell Tate. Also, his teammate, George Pickens, is a decent one. That's why I called him CD Pickens. Not concerned at all. Tate will be one of the first 3 wide receivers off the board. And he's going to be a great, like, if he's not a wide receiver 1 within his first 3 seasons, I will be surprised. Same from a Kyle Lemon and Jordan Tyson, though I think Lemon is a little bit more reception reliant, so I could see him be a wide receiver 2s. That's the thing with the S tier for the wide receivers, because wide receiver can be so deep, or so, well, not so deep, but such a, like, 15 points per game versus 13.5 points per game could be the difference between being wide receiver 9 and wide receiver 19. So all that being said is Tyson and Lemon, I think, could be high-end wide receiver 2s and be like, oh my God, they didn't finish as 1s, but like we'll be happy with it that they're top 15, top 20 every single year. Those 3, they're great. We don't need to spend a lot of time on them if you want to drop into the article and read them. I wanted to move on to KC Concepcion, say it like that. I might be the highest. I don't know what it is. Like, I just put him by himself in the A tier because I do think he's going to be a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 at worst, wherever he goes. I said he's a mix of Ladd McConkey and Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale McConkey. The dude separates with ease already. Fools defenders. Puts up yards after the catch. I saw some people actually say the Amon-Ra St. Brown comparison, but I used that for Lemon, and I think the Amon-Ra St. Brown is a little bit lofty for KC. But that being said, like going all the way back to NC State, I'm a fan of the player. And hopefully it's a Brian Thomas, well, rookie Brian Thomas situation where I was higher than most, or like Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's like I was higher as a rookie and overall on Jackson Smith and Jigba. I know a lot of people are on him, but point being, hopefully this is one of those situations and not one of the ones where I'm just overrating what I see. Again, not perfect. So moving on from him, a lot of people would say Denzel Boston deserves to be in that tier with him. I have some concerns. I did compare him to Cortland Sutton and Michael Thomas, but that alone maybe even makes the rankings seem low. I think that he's just kind of more of a possession wideout. I didn't love his play against zone. Really good against man. And again, this is a situation where the landing spot will depend, because I could see Boston on the right team. Hell, if you were going to say that obviously Cortland Sutton's there and they have hope for Patrick Bryant, but if he was like, hey, by the way, Denzel Boston to the Broncos and Sean Payton envisions him as his new Michael Thomas, boom, move him up. Put him on the wrong team, you can see how that could go. And that's the case with a lot of the B wide receivers and even down from there in the season, all that type of stuff. Same thing with running back. A lot of it depends on the team that they go to. I wanted to bring up Elijah Surratt because I love how easy this dude gets open. In fact, I'm saying it just because I'm making the joke myself that he's like Waffle House, by the way, which is his nickname, because he's always open. So I actually think there's some Keenan Allen to his game. I called him Waffle Allen because I want to get the waffle in there. I know Keenan House, it's not terrible, but dude, just always open. Love the nickname, by the way. 2 more at wide receiver before moving on to the tight ends. Skylar Bell from Connecticut has a lot of fans, including a friend of the show, Scott Bogman, who's also good at evaluating rookies, by the way. You should give him a listen. And we'll do stuff together this offseason like we always do. I really see the upside. I actually think there's some Darnell Mooney, even a smaller DJ Chark with him. If he gets into round 2 or 3 of the draft, hell, if he gets into round 2, no question. But if he gets into round 3, I could see bumping him up into B tier. Right now I have him as C tier. I just think there's enough risk and hesitancy with his game that I think he'll be a wide receiver 3 on most NFL teams. But again, we'll have to see who drafts him and when. With wide receivers, obviously, one of the biggest things I forgot to mention to you guys, if you don't know, hopefully you do, but if you don't, draft capital does matter. It's not the only thing. I do have an article over at The Athletic that I did a few years ago about round 1 wide receivers and how they have a 50% hit rate as being a top 35 wide receiver, which, by the way, just kind of tells you that even the NFL is not perfect. And part of it is because the plays and teams and schemes that these players end up going to. So keep that in mind. But we even have a lesser hit rate. It just goes down from there, rounds 2, 3, 4, 5. But the draft capital does matter if it's the first 2 days. It does help. Day 3 wide receivers are much, much less likely to hit for us in fantasy. They could be real life quality NFL players. And I know everybody's screaming Puka Nacua. Dude, that happens once every 20 years. So moving on. Anyway, just sidebarred myself here. Another player from Clemson. Maybe, I don't know. Do I have beef with Clemson? Coming for you, Clemson. Hate you guys. But anyway, Antonio Williams from Clemson is in C tier for me too. I compared him to Hunter Renfrow, Sterling Shepard. Chain mover, good yak ability, smart in the slot. But that's the thing. Renfrow, Shepard, I think there's a cap to him. And I think he's another one that just ends up being a consistent number 3, forced into being a number 2, maybe provides wide receiver 2 or 3 value for us in fantasy, volume reliant, obviously, also as well. But that's where I have him. I know some people might be wondering, and I've just seen the talk about him. By the way, Hunter Shepard, I said that almost sounds like it should be an RPG game class, like the Hunter Shepard. I don't know. Hopefully you enjoy the fact that I have some fun with these podcasts, especially in the offseason. All right, tight ends, before we get out of here, there are 2 S tiers. I would almost call Sadiq SS tier for, again, you video game people like myself. Just one part Vernon Davis freakishness, another part Delaney Walker that wants to do everything and can do everything, including blocking. Delaney Davis, Sadiq's going to be a first rounder. If he gets inside the top 15, would not shock me at all. Sadiq could be in the conversation to be a tight end 1 as a rookie, and we've seen that hit a lot more recently than it has over the years. The other one, Eli Stowers. I think a lot of people were excited about his testing. I think there's some Evan Ingram, Gerald Everett to his game. Evan Everett is who I call them. Evan Everett. He's more of one that falls into the tight end 2 probably out of the gate. Maybe second half of the season can get tight end 1 and especially year 2. There are plenty of A tiers, 3 of them this year. So they have 5 S tier and A tier tight ends. Tight ends been hitting a lot lately, and this is another really good year. Claire, Trigg, and Endris are in my A tier. Mark Strange, Eric Likely, and Dalton Hawkinson are the comparisons. I did those in order. I was going to say guess who they were, but I guess it kind of gave it away with the order. And then there are a couple deeper tight ends with the right situation, right usage, some good speed scores, some that went the other way, despite the fact that they have consistency. That, like Marlon Klein, who could just be like a Dallas Goedert type in a best case situation, but Luke Wilson with 2 L's. By the way, speaking of 2 L's, it's not Martin Klein, it's Marlon Klein. That's the downside tier. And then there's some other names, but the one being Dallin Bentley of Utah. There's another one. Scott Bogman's a big fan. There's other big fans out there. Remember Kobe Fleener? That's what I thought was the perfect comparison for him, is that a lot of upside, a lot of potential. And remember, oh, by the way, Kobe Fleener played with Andrew Luck. He's going to be amazing. I said that myself. I missed on that one. But the upside of that kind of tight end prospect is Bentley, but that's also the clear example of that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to hit. So that's about, 20-ish, maybe 25, somewhere in there, because mixed in some other names. Kind of a quick look at the rookies that we're going to be talking about when the draft comes around, and for fantasy purposes, it's a little bit of a thinner class, especially at running back. So if you are strong in Dynasty and want to trade away for 2027, I would do it. I hesitated to say that because in my mind, I already went to my next thought, and the fact that a lot of experienced and smart Dynasty players had already done so or already thinking the same. So if you can't, here's where I would actually pivot, is either one, just take it and maybe get some hype built up, like a good Washington situation, or maybe get it built off in the offseason. But the other way I would look at it is not necessarily trading for 2027, but trade for the veterans that are in good spots or changing teams. Some of these running backs, wide receivers that nobody ever wants, and we're seeing a lot more succeed even into their 30s at this point. I would just trade for the veterans to strengthen your team if you're a contender, especially, and it fills a void. I know nobody wants to trade for players that I only get 2 or 3 years left out of them, but that's why you can make these trades. First rounder for somebody that hell might even be 27, 28, a buy low opportunity at wide receiver. I'd be doing that all day long. Or even rookies that had a down season from last year, 2025 rookies. Buy them. But anyway, point being is that if you can't trade for picks, trade for the players. People overvalue picks in general in Dynasty. So there's your advice. I'll be back in 2 weeks to recap the free agency and talk more about those way too early rankings. Would appreciate your love being spread again. That was maybe not the best wording, but tell your friends and your family and everybody and your dogs. You got a new doggy that's a new fan of the podcast. Ziggy, he is listening. Although he's also sleeping at the same time because he already got bored. I don't know.